The rain had just stopped, leaving the air thick with the scent of wet concrete and blooming gardenias that lined the driveway of the Langston estate. A matte black limousine purred to a stop in front of the circular fountain, where marble lions spat recycled water into a shallow pool. The rear door opened slowly. Richard Langston stepped out with a grimace, leaning heavily on an obsidian cane carved with the crest of his first company. His tailored suit hung loosely on his once broad frame, now thin and weakened by months of progressive decline. His left hand trembled, despite his efforts to steady it, and every step echoed with the sound of struggle disguised as elegance. Behind him, an assistant hustled to keep up, muttering details about his schedule, but Richard wasn't listening. He didn't need to hear another empty pitch or feel another set of sympathetic eyes sizing him up like a crumbling monument. He'd been to Germany, Switzerland, even a top-secret clinic in Japan. Nothing worked. He had outlived everyone's optimism except his own arrogance. A banner above the gate read Tri-County Youth Science Expo, encouraging the innovators of tomorrow. Bright colors, cardboard displays, and earnest high schoolers in lab coats surrounded folding tables. Pierre stunned. He told himself, just another box to check so the press wouldn't call him heartless. He moved slowly through the crowd, flanked by the security guards. Cameras flashed. Smiling faces greeted him like he was still a god. He wasn't. Not anymore. Near the far end of the row, a small table stood mostly ignored. No flashy poster boards, no digital screens, just a shy boy with wild hair, glasses too big for his face, and a strange contraption that looked like it was built out of a blender. Some kind of tuning fork and an old radio. Richard was already turning away when the boy's voice stopped him. Mr. Langston, I think I can help you. The billionaire turned slowly, raising an eyebrow. Help me, he repeated, amused and tired. The boy nodded. With your condition, I know what it is. I've been studying you. A hush fell around the nearby tables. Someone snickered. One of Richard's guards stepped forward, but Richard raised a hand to stop him. You think you can heal me? He said, his voice dripping with disbelief. Kid, if you can actually do that, I'll give you $1 million. The boy didn't blink. Okay, he said, quietly. Richard chuckled darkly. All right then, Einstein, impress me. He lowered himself carefully into the folding chair beside the boy's table, still half laughing until the machine started to hum. And something began to change. The hum of the strange machine deepened, resonating with a subtle vibration that Richard could feel in his ribs. Not unpleasant, but unexpected. It was the kind of sound that seemed to exist on the edge of hearing, like a low thunder that hadn't quite broken through the clouds. The boy Eli, according to his name tag, written in shaky, sharply adjusted a few knobs with delicate precision. His brow furrowed like a composer fine-tuning a symphony. Richard sat stiffly, expecting the sensation to be some trick, maybe a minor current of electricity or the placebo of attention, but after a few seconds, he realized something else was happening. The tremor in his left hand, always the most pronounced, had still, not completely but enough that he noticed, enough that he stopped smiling. He glanced at Eli. What exactly is this supposed to be? Eli didn't look up. A bioresonant modulator. It reads your body's electromagnetic frequencies and reintroduces healthy ones, like tuning a stringed instrument. Richard scoffed. Pseudoscience. Maybe, Eli said calmly. But it's working. The confidence in the boy's voice was unnerving. Richard shifted in his seat, eyes narrowing as he looked down at his hands again. No tremor. Not even a twitch. For the first time in nearly a year, his fingers felt still, grounded. Probably coincidence, he muttered, trying to sound. The sinister. Eli finally looked up. You've tried everything else, haven't you? Richard didn't answer. Behind them, the murmurs grew louder. A few students had stopped presenting to their own judges, drawn instead to the side of the world-famous billionaire sitting at a shabby student table, with his hands resting in complete, inexplicable calm. Eli reached under the table and pulled out a tablet. On screen was a crude, animated diagram of neural networks and something like magnetic fields circling the body. He tapped through slides like a seasoned lecturer. It's not just the disease, he said. Your brain is misfiring electrical signals because of a breakdown in cellular conductivity. I don't think the problem's in the neurons themselves, it's in the communication between them. So I use magnetic feedback loops to correct the distortion. Asterisk, you're what, 14? Richard asked, still staring at his own hand like it belonged to someone else. Asterisk, 15 in October. Eli replied, without missing a beat. Asterisk, the humming slowed. Eli powered down the machine and sat back, folding his hands in his lap. That's enough for now. If I go too long, the body rejects the frequency. Asterisk, is this thing dangerous? Richard asked. Asterisk, only if I calibrate it wrong. Eli said, which I won't. Asterisk, Richard was silent. The cynical voice in his head was still, scrambling to label this a fluke. But something in his chest, something quieter, was beginning to whisper a different possibility. Asterisk, he stood slowly, testing his balance, still weak, but more controlled than before. No tremor. Asterisk, the guards flanked him. His assistant stood nearby, phone already recording. Asterisk, Eli didn't move. You said $1 million. Asterisk, Richard looked down at him, caught between skepticism and something approaching. Asterisk, I did. He said, but now I need to know what else you can do. Asterisk, Eli smiled small, shy, and not entirely surprised. Asterisk, I was hoping you'd say that. Asterisk, the limousine's interior was eerily quiet, save for the soft ticking of the analog clock set into the dashboard. The city lights flickered beyond the tinted windows as the car glided through the dark, smooth as a shadow. Richard Langston sat with his arms folded, staring blankly out the window, his mind miles away from the skyline. Asterisk, across from him sat Eli, the boy now clinging tightly to a small black case, his machine, disassembled and packed with care. He looked out of place in a polished leather seat, his jeans a bit too short, his sneakers scuffed and damp from the rain, but there was no nervousness in him, just a quiet alertness, a kind of practiced stillness that made Richard keep glancing at him, as if expecting the boy to blink and disappear. Asterisk, where did you learn all this? Richard finally asked, his voice low. Asterisk, Eli hesitated. My mom used to work in diagnostics at St. Jude. She brought home old textbooks. I started reading them when I was 8. Asterisk, that explains the medical jargon, Richard said. Doesn't explain the machine. Asterisk, Eli opened the case a crack, just enough to glance at the components inside before snapping it shut again. I read papers online. Quantum biology, nonlinear field theory, stuff most people think is garbage. But I saw patterns, and I tested things. Asterisk, tested on who? Asterisk, myself. Eli said simply, and once, on my dog. He had seizures. I fixed it. Asterisk, Richard looked at him more carefully now. There was no arrogance in the boy's voice, no showmanship, just facts, observations, like a scientist, not a salesman. Asterisk, they drove in silence for a few more minutes before Richard leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Asterisk, you do realize what you've done if this is real? He said, you're playing with something bigger than you know. Medical science, regulatory boards, corporate interest people will come for you. Asterisk, Ellie's gaze didn't waver. They can try. Asterisk, that made Richard smile, despite himself. It wasn't bravado. The boy wasn't naive, he was prepared. And that, somehow, unnerved him more than anything else. Asterisk, the car turned onto a private drive lined with trees. The Langston R&D campus loomed ahead like a fortress of glass and steel, lights glowing in sleek vertical lines. It was nearly midnight, but the lab would still be open. Always was. Asterisk, Richard pulled out his phone and tapped a few commands. I'm taking you inside, he said. Not for publicity, not for show. I want to see exactly what that thing does, under real conditions, in front of real experts. Asterisk, Eli nodded. Good. I want that too. Asterisk, they stepped out of the car into the cool night air. The guards opened the door to the lab wing, and Richard led the boy past biometric scanners and retinal locks, down corridors of polished floors and humming servers. Scientists looked up in disbelief as the billionaire passed by, especially when they saw who was following. Asterisk, Richard paused at the door to the diagnostics chamber and looked down at Eli. Asterisk, if this works, he said quietly, it's not just about healing me anymore. Asterisk, Eli met his gaze. I know. Asterisk, Richard punched in the access code. Asterisk, inside, a new chapter was waiting to be written. Asterisk.